They spoke up, but not following through is like refusing the words of the absolute gods and incurring your anger. Just as he was about to advise his brother to do as they said, Jian let out a laugh. Looking up, I didn't feel happy at all, but saw his eyes irritated and annoyed. Just now I was thinking why Yang Wei's hunting dog was here. Now I understand that everyone on the birch side wants to stuff their stomachs with delicious food. Picking up a pair of flip-flops from someone's bathroom, Jian muttered a few words that sounded like curses. He stomped hard on the sidewalk, creating a vortex of aftershocks that continuously rushed and sent all the guardians flying. Destiny on high. These guys probably only have a muzzle. They can't resist even one bit of this powerful bright light. Jian's one kick blew away all the guardian angels in the city, returning the normal clear blue sky. Jimin opened his eyes in confusion, seeing Jian's familiar trademark smile. Above, the guardian angels had all dispersed. The sky without the guardian angels and barriers can clearly see the original color. And from here Jimin realizes that this shaggy young man is not normal at all. Suddenly he called both Han Jimin's full name and his first name. Then pointed at the fat guy with foam at the mouth, asking again if you said earlier that this was a Gemini apostle? That's right. That group is both crowded and dangerous. Many members. Also have many important characters that no one wants to mess with. Suddenly hearing Jian ask a question that has no beginning or end. They have a lot of money, right? Jimin was about to ask again when he saw a villainous smile on his face. Look at all the clothes this guy was carrying. They were all branded clothes. When the time came, Jian sat down and grabbed the cardigan first, singing that Lala would save him money on clothes. 20 years in the Devil's Tower living like a hairy ape in an abandoned zoo. Now that Jimin had just lost his hair, he gave him a like, complimenting him on how handsome he looked, making Jian really shy. Plus that old day, even though he was the 13th saint, his power kept betraying him. Every wind that blew was like blowing through a dandelion field, blowing his hair around, looking like a neighbor's uncle poking at thick hair. Now that he's a handsome idol, how can Jian not like it? Suddenly there was a buzzing sound nearby that caught Jian's attention. He looked over uncomfortably and discovered that it was a mixed fly and mosquito monster nearby. If we don't have an electric racket, we use our hands. Jian hates these insects, so he just used his hand to crush it and then released the remains before Jimin's admiring eyes. Having just killed one and a few more were buzzing. Jian's ears that were better than a dog's became more and more demanding. Jimin saw him like that, so he curiously asked him if he knew how to fish for flies and shit. Could it be you? Could it be that you admit that you are shit? Jian strongly criticized Jimin's theory and looked around to find what attracted these insects. His eyes fell on the colorful and cumbersome things on the shelves, telling him that the reason was in those things. There, that goddess statue that Jian said was an evil object that attracts disaster. Jimin cried without tears. I picked that up at the first dump. I received it directly from the Saint Aries. His face was extremely proud to present the saint's blessing. A gust of wind blew across the two parts of the statue and immediately went to Dalat. Furthermore, Jian acted as if he had just touched something dirty, ignoring Jimin's aching heart. The item that he held more than an egg and caught it like a flower was now in Jian's hand. With a cold expression, he said this mask was to monitor the person who bought it. Boy. As he finished speaking, he searched every corner. This music box to steal information. This watch to attract disaster monsters to come here. Every time he found more and more dirty things in the house. Jian realized that those bastards not only robbed him of money, but also sold evil things to people who didn't know anything to siphon their money. Just thinking about it made Jimin's facial muscles twitch, making Jimin regretful that he didn't dare come closer to stop him. From outside the house, I could clearly hear Jian roaring, throwing everything away for me. Suddenly the door opened. The noise made Jian, who was about to crush the evil watch, stop for about 2 seconds. I glanced at the new red-headed boy who had just entered the house with an annoyed face. Jian was at home and someone opened his mouth and asked, "Who are you to come in here?" Jimin tried to put on a peaceful face and called Sung Jae back. But Sung Jae didn't listen, only listened to Jian's cheeky question. His face darkened and he asked back, "Are you asking who I am? I'm the owner of this house." Sung Jae's whole body emerged with blue power. His face darkened, ready to protect his house. Jian only spoke loudly, as if he had just discovered that it was completely normal for the homeowner to enter his house. Around the three people, furniture was scattered and broken, suddenly feeling like they were being made jealous. Yangwei's Aries church from outside heard the fat man's screams. Yangwei heard the news that the guardian angel in Korea had disappeared and his face turned pale. The subordinate below confirmed once again, adding that the branch of the Aries church in southern Korea is extremely panicked because of this. Yangwei also felt bad because he had never heard of this happening. Guardian angels are the subordinates of absolute gods. No awakened person should dare to chase them away. Who would dare to act so boldly? Pointing his finger at his subordinate, he told him to contact the other saints to see what the situation was. Yangwei was about to leave but heard more information from the centaur side and did not respond. That guy named Hugo is now a mercenary in the UK. So not being able to contact him is normal. Yangwei didn't mind at first. But his subordinates hesitated and then said that Hugo had immediately left the country as soon as he arrived in England. So where does it go? This caught Yangwei's attention. Then when he heard Hugo's destination was also Korea, he immediately went back and thought for a long time. Is there any reason for such a coincidence? From the beginning, Hugo was Lee Jian's close friend. Since Lee Jian hid in the Devil's Tower, he rarely returned to Korea. Could it be because the rumor that Lee Jian is still alive has been floating around lately? If it's just a rumor and Hugo goes there to confirm it, then it's fine. But if that guy with the scarred face and long hair really came back alive, what would Yangwei do? He immediately grabbed a candlestick that touched a complicated spot nearby and threw it straight down at the subordinate below so that he could barely avoid being angry. Investigate this matter clearly. If there's anything else, just say so. Seeing that his boss lost patience when hearing about Jian, the subordinate also hesitated, but there was still something to report, which was that Ares' apostle was found unconscious near the place where the guardian angel disappeared. He was left on the cracked road with only his underwear on. According to witnesses, he had seen him in a conflict with a handsome man. No one knew how handsome he was, so Yangwei's eyes only stared at the broken candlestick on the ground. Always deny that it's definitely not Lee Jian, because he's a guy with a scarred face, blind eyes and a large bald patch. But anyway, all of this is too coincidental. Adding rumors of Lee Jian's return and Yangwei's failed quest to conquer the Spider Queen could shake his political position. Not allowing that to happen, Yangwei asked his private plane to pick him up immediately. The subordinate looked up, somewhat confused. Did the saint go there himself? That's right. Now assigning work to the gang makes Yangwei uneasy, so he should go to Korea himself to see what's going on. He swung up his jacket, clipped a cigar to look like someone busy with business, and brought a few juniors with him to witness the events in South Korea with his own eyes. That night, in Lean Bok Buang Hospital, the sound of a machine connected to a motionless person on the bed sounded monotonous along with the sound of a ventilator, making the older man roar indignantly. Who is it? Who turned my nephew into this? Beating my nephew lying in a heap and stripping off all his clothes. He still hasn't woken up yet and doesn't know who the culprit is. He pointed to a man in a white suit standing against the wall, demanding an answer. The stereotypical answer from an S-rank Ares apostle came out of Min Sung-hoon's mouth, saying, "Don't worry. The Ares church sent me here to take care of this." Sung Jae thought he had just heard the funniest joke in the world but couldn't laugh. Just frowned and asked if he met this guy at the Devil's Tower. Then this guy single-handedly cleared away a whole bunch of calamity beasts with his bare hands. And he even defeated an A- rank apostle. Jimin knew what he was telling sounded like a joke. But he didn't know what to do but nod repeatedly to increase his credibility. But even though he believed that, Sung Jae was still angry because this guy entered someone's house and broke things for an extremely unreasonable reason. That the furniture in this house were all evil objects. All fake. What guild are you in that you dare say that? But does Jian look like he needs to join a guild? He smiled, making Sung Hae want to stop talking but still tried to ask. Which god do you follow? Those guys should follow me. Right? Jian didn't attack the main focus. But just hearing about those 12 idiots made the veins on his head pop. Every question Jian asked over and over again. He answered stupidly like someone from heaven. Sung Jae ran out of dipping sauce and patiently asked the last question. What's your name? If you say this nonsense, he will probably be punched right away. As Lee Jian, he said his name calmly as if it were completely normal. But Sung Jae burst into a flame of resentment, burning with anger at his answer. Then he unleashed his full power, roaring, "How dare you impersonate my Mr. Lee Jian on? Jimin was scared to death and quickly reminded those still in the house. Grandpa, it's a rented house. Don't be crazy. But Sung Jae was crazy and didn't care. He just released all of the Aries Apostle's magic power, causing the system panel to pop up to warn Jian. It looks like a great salad. But if you keep burning this house like that. Jian kindly reminded him and activated the skill of stopping mental vision, seeing that Sung Jae's strength is at level A with the title of Punisher. What caught his attention the most was Sung Jae's eyes burning with the blue fire of S-rank skills, Cremation Mage, and A-rank Eternal Ice Seal. Even more thoughtfully, Jian also read that this younger brother's personality was stubborn towards his idols and a learning genius. He curled his lips and smiled. How could this young man be able to use high-level summoning magic because he was a genius? In learning, that guy is still using 2 eyes on the statue behind him and is planning to blow up this apartment building. Jimin was about to pee in his pants, screaming loudly, "Please run away. Sung Jae is an Aries apostle. Touching idol Lee Jian is business." Sung Jae tilted his head and warned Jimin, "Get out of here immediately so you don't die together. You can touch anyone and impersonating idol names won't work." Jian suddenly appeared right behind Sung Jae with his hip-hop never die hand, grinning so loudly that he was startled, and when he turned around, he took a bite of Jian's hand and rushed headlong into the wall. Well, whatever. Let this crazy guy burn down the house. Where can he shower and rest? Jimin doesn't care about the house anymore. Now he just hopes Sung Jae doesn't die. Jian still hasn't let go of the perverted smile on his lips, which only makes Jimin worry twice as much. Why does he say it's okay when Sung Jae seems like he's having a seizure? Jian left the pile of frothy red hair to Jimin, and I yawned and crawled into a nearby room to sleep. Unexpectedly, when the door opened, what caught his eye was a whole room full of statues and models. A vivid chibi version of the legendary Lee Jian that had been restored with color and scar treatment. Jimin carried Sung Jae in, explaining that it was nothing more than his brother's addiction to Lee Jian. But he was Lee Jian. He wasn't used to seeing his healthy head, so he snapped it down in Sung Jae's terrified scream. Jimin was afraid he would go crazy and jumped in to bite Jian, dragging Sung Jae out quickly, leaving him inside to cut off all the heads of the statues. Sung Jae's soul was deeply traumatized that day, leaving nothing but screams echoing through the sky. The evening news in the city could not ignore the story of the Aries Apostle being stripped naked on the street by a suspicious person. Hugo already knew about Lee Jian's perverted style. He sighed heavily and was confused. Hearing this news made his head hurt. After hearing this news, while he was upset, someone came to ask if he wanted anything to drink. Hugo immediately warned in a dirty voice, "Cut down on nonsense and go away." Yang Wei, the waitress, smiled quite a bit. Her eyes changed strangely. Her voice changed to that of a man, and without hesitation greeted Hugo. "Long time no see." Yang Wei still maintained the appearance of a serving girl, but she intimated that he relied on information from Hugo. But it only made him more angry. There's a reason why I didn't like this fat guy from the beginning. And he was so fucking disgusting touching himself around me. Seeing that he was not happy to tease Hugo. Hugo groaned and Yang Wei immediately logged out of the employee's mind, making her panic and wonder why she was here next to a male guest like this. Hugo was angry with Yang Wei's cowardly behavior but couldn't punch anyone. He just swallowed, determined to find Li Jian before the other dogs sniffed this place. But where to find him when only the remnants of his perverted acts are left? In Buqian, in the shopping district. Sung Jae's soul accepted the truth and returned to his body. Now walking around the supermarket with Jimin. Only when he came out here did he dare to scream that Li Jian was a hero to all mankind. But what about the guy at home? Maybe he didn't believe it. But Jimin's eyes saw that person coming out of the Devil's Tower. That was the most convincing detail. Sung Jae didn't believe it. That year it was his centaur, Saint Father, who told Li Jian that he died in the Devil's Tower. Robbery. Robbery. The two people were still stunned and did not understand anything when they saw a flash of white light blowing away everything on the road. The robber wore a mask that looked like blue underwear and was clutching a few bills as he ran away. At this speed, it could only be a cancer apostle using his ability to steal. It hit everywhere in the supermarket, taking things and money so fast that it couldn't be seen with the naked eye. Secretly happy in his mind, the Saints were able to keep the belt. He was about to fall to the next place to button his clothes when someone lovingly held him by the arm. I caught him, but this shot went straight into the robber's stomach, causing him to tremble and lie on the ground in pain until Jimin realized that the person he had just caught was Jian. Suddenly, someone's voice rang out from behind the counter, praising Jian's impressive work. Normally, it's not easy to catch a cancer apostle. But in my opinion, you're just an ordinary apostle. Next time, okay? It's better to arrest him by hand and call the police. Jian looked at the gray-haired guy in front of him, confused as to what the idiot was talking about. The conversation had not yet begun when it was interrupted by an incomprehensible clucking sound that echoed from top to bottom throughout the supermarket, getting louder and louder. It was as if it was both on the ground and the ceiling. And then everything shook inexplicably. The cancer apostle thief was lying on the ground, thinking that there was an earthquake. When the time came, he took this opportunity to run at the speed he was proud of. I almost got put in the mouth by an idiot. Now your dad is going to play a non-stop song and kick his ass. The partying was so fun that someone was so greedy that he dug through the ground and crawled up right in front of the robber. Then curled his giant body full of legs. Tell me to let you play at my place that also has Vina house music. The Calamity Beast's appearance in the green area was enough to make the cross-faced robber no longer have a drop of blood left. So why does it still want to play with it? The robber gradually backed away, wanting to avoid jumping with the beast but also not wanting to slow down and be caught in the ward. It jumped up high to avoid this centipede, confident that with its speed it could not catch up with it with 100 legs. Who would have thought that the centipede wanted to chase? But a mouth bigger than a well full of fangs bared out right in the robber's path. The teeth closed decisively. The spider live-streamed the mukbang right before the eyes of hundreds of people in the supermarket. The Spider Queen, whose upper body was covered in scales, was just scales for her lower body. After finishing her appetizer, she glanced at the crowd below with bright eyes as if she was choosing ingredients for the main dish. Warning. Warning, this is not a drill. The disaster beast Spider Queen has appeared in the supermarket, asking all residents to leave as quickly as possible. Before the intro ended, the spider used a spell to spit out a bunch of insects of all kinds that rushed towards the crowd in sight. Just now, whoever had the view to watch the nearest mukbang didn't buy a ticket. I paid with my life and she accepted it all. In a moment, the whole supermarket was in chaos with the sound of people screaming and running away, half alive and half dead. To add to the drama, a series of announcements continuously rang out. This area had turned red. Everyone already knows if she doesn't say it. So why don't you turn on the remix music for the full set? while so many people were running for their lives but still died. The middle school boy was so frightened by the unfortunate trip to the supermarket that he stood and sobbed, ignoring that spider mouth full of fangs rushing towards him. However, just like the character who was saved by the male lead, Lee Ji-yeon punched the spider in the head and made the hemorrhoids pop out, and asked this kid to stand there when he cried. Afraid of Spider 1. Afraid of the guy who just punched Spider 10. He put his hand forward, scaring the boy to the point that his soul entered his body. He quickly ran away. I intended to play the role of a good person, but one moment of glory turned to the role of a countryman. Ji-yeon had to switch targets to the demon beasts to fulfill his role as a hero. It was difficult to understand why they appeared in the green area. Well, whatever it is, it's just the right time for his snake to test its potency. Ji-yeon excitedly looked at the group of arthritic legs and smiled as he started the halftime exercise program. The shiny black car sped on the highway due to priority. Inside was Yang Wei, who had just replied that Korea had received news of a disaster attacking a supermarket in Bucheon. Sweat poured down his head. He asked again what a monster was. But he did not expect that it was the Spider Queen he had just encountered not long ago. My mother's whore is dead, guys. The last time Yang Wei tried to use his big belly to destroy that disaster but couldn't. He could only seal it. Who would have thought that he could escape in? Is now destroying the supermarket in the green area. The more he thought about it, Yang Wei was angry and angry. Because of his own PR. He had to go kill monsters alone. But he couldn't do it alone. Areas on Earth are currently divided into 6 levels by color. Blue is the residence of high-ranking people such as saints or local authorities. Green is a safe area for humanity to live. Yellow can still survive but has to live underground because it has reached an alarming level. It is orange in color. Danger lurks everywhere with a large number of monsters. In the red area, there was only water left as prey for high-level animals, and in the black area, there was not even a belt to look for. The Spider Queen appeared at the Bashan supermarket and officially changed the color of the green area to red. So the subordinate asked Yang Wei how he wanted to deal with that supermarket. Tell them to bury that place. Yang Wei's hands tightened. He was certain he couldn't let out the news that the Saint had spent a lot of resources just to destroy the Spider Queen but couldn't. Knowing clearly that he was being reckless, he had no ability other than Yang Wei's family order to ask his subordinates to announce that the person in that place was dead and send an apostle to tear down that building. In that supermarket, there were now unpleasant hissing and clucking sounds as hundreds of large arthropods ran loudly in the same direction, where he poked his gray hair as if it had just been taken out of the freezer. Breathing out smoke, Sung-hoon slammed his hand on the ground, causing it to freeze in a long streak, cursing at the damn insects. The crabhead's ice prison successfully froze about a dozen at a time. But it also made him sweat. For an S-rank like Sung-hoon, a move that can make the whole group unable to move is already very successful. But before I could celebrate for more than 10 seconds, the bells made a clicking sound, and the hideous centipede rushed out to take revenge. Even though Sung-hoon had just created the ice, now his head was covered in sweat and he had no strength to resist anymore. Suddenly Ji-yeon appeared right in front of him with a pile of soft drink cans in his hand, speaking calmly. Snowflake boy, I'm here. Looking around for a while, I still couldn't recognize where Lee Ji-yeon had appeared. But this stage was in his hands, so he had to let him act. Throwing a can of Coke, but the author hid the label. Ji-yeon asked if he could make some water to cool his stomach. His hand holding the can of water emitted incredible strength and all the cans were thrown away at once. Everyone gets a can of water right away so they can drink as much as they want. No need to fight over it. The other centipede stood behind without a part, intending to howl for his own can. Immediately having a can of water go from right to left, blocking the howl right at the throat. His mother gave him water to drink, and bared his teeth. Feeling so sick, Ji-yeon quickly walked over and let each of them close their mouths to avoid fighting. The more he beat him, The angrier he became. His eyes widened and he turned on flying mode, circling around the blood-stained knife tip, making Sung-ji gasp and stuff the whole dumpling in. Hello. The system pops up to report that the disaster was successfully resolved. Experience points increased and an ingredient was obtained. Can you explain more clearly what ingredient is this? The system summoned something that looked like a colorful stone in Li Jian's hand, letting him know that he could create new skills and sacred items with these ingredients. He held the glowing thing tightly in his hand so he could examine it later when he was free. Currently his body's movements still meet his requirements. Li Jian is in an extremely comfortable state, not paying attention to the little snowflake behind him staring at his performance. He even comfortably returned the knife to Sung-jae, saying that he had brought it from home and now returned it. Great bro. Now no one dares to cut with that knife anymore? Li Jian's indifferent expression made the crew cut head think for a while. It looked familiar. Finally remembering something, he screamed loudly, causing Jian to turn around and eat his entire index finger in the face. Are you the one who attacked our 2 apostles? Isn't meeting that fat guy who defamed me and that horse-faced girl one time enough? Li Jian was so scared that he didn't know why. He jumped over and punched his crew cut head, causing her to turn her jaw. His mouth uttered a sentence full of villainy. You already know too much. How can you find me? If you want people not to know, then don't do it. While having a proper conversation, he rushed over and punched someone. What a son of a bitch. The clothes you're wearing were taken from someone else. Moreover, he still carries the S-rank Gemini Apostle badge and flails around everywhere, asking why people don't know. Li Jian was criticized for stealing, but he didn't know what it was like to be embarrassed. He reached out and pulled out the badge, wondering what kind of trash this was. It looks like a rustic tent that I carry everywhere, completely ignoring the snowflake boy, making him so angry that I want to rush over and grab his hair. Li Jian squeezed the tip of this night market product right in front of the birch apostle, mumbling loudly that the witch tricked you guys and then these 320k things went to the market to be dumped. Hey, and me, and I'm in this chat. Don't interrupt. Li Jian, who was having fun, suddenly collapsed because the foul-mouthed thing jumped out and interrupted him. Realizing it before him, Jimin trembled and pointed with his elbows and feet, nervously backing away because it was the Spider Queen who was driving the chickens from the other end of the supermarket and had come to this place. The crew cut hair quarreled with Jian, standing there indifferently, and wasting his time going down to the underworld to explain. Luckily for him, he was standing next to Li Jian. His body was filled with cool mint energy and flashed straight forward, screaming, "Hey you spider bitch." He shot straight up high to where the Spider Queen stood, preparing to fight. He was so dirty that he took your father's punch and then left immediately. His mother told me to go away and hit him straight down, sinking all over the floor and tiles. The crowd that was running around suddenly stopped running and opened their eyes to look at the place where the foul-mouthed person had just attacked them. Jimin and Sung-jae watched Li Jian attack a few times and still weren't used to it, let alone the snowflake boy. Only 3 words came to mind. What's going on? Who is this guy? Confronting the Spider Queen head-on without any sacred objects, and with a smile on his mouth. He looks so perverted. While in a daze, a man's voice rang out in his ear, calling all the birch apostles inside the supermarket. Only the 2 of them, Sung-jae and crew cut Sung-hoon, heard it, because this was the voice of church leader Choi Hyuk, who was transmitting to the Aries apostle. He's nearby, ordering both of you to get your asses out of the supermarket right away. The Aries apostle will soon bury this whole building. A red curtain has appeared outside the supermarket with a radius of about 10 meters. Perhaps the 2 of them also noticed the strangeness in the air. Choi Hyuk was not like an apostle. He always said that this was Yangwei's instruction, so he couldn't go against it. He wanted the Aries apostle to hide the fact that he couldn't control the Spider Queen. Min Sung-hoon, you have the ability to teleport. Quickly take Sung-jae out. The crew cut man lost his temper and asked again if the commander wanted only 2 people to escape from there? Because before his frightened eyes, many people were very lucky to escape that massacre, but he said he would let them die here. Below the crack, there were still countless arthropods rushing out, and that perverted young man was still swinging back and forth to hit the queen spider. That truth caused Sung Hoon to struggle mentally, choosing the right thing to do. But Commander Hyuk did not give him much time and urged him. Is there a problem? Choosing between living alone and dying alone, Sung Hoon quickly made the choice. Of course he did not object to his superior's orders. Besides, Sung Jae's voice angrily shouted. Do you know what the situation is like here? Why would you give such an indecent order? Plus that guy Sung Hoon. How dare you open your mouth and say that the people here will be buried too? What's more important than his own life? Sung Hoon's mind was spinning, constantly coming up with all kinds of convincing reasons about how this would make people think about us silver apostles. Sung Jae opened his eyes wide in surprise. When is the time to talk about being afraid of what others will think? That's right, Sung Hoon has thought things through. If news about the Spider Queen gets out, the power and belief in the absolute God will certainly be reduced, affecting the protection of the gods. Ignoring Sung Jae's irritation, Sung Hoon told him to come here quickly and come with him. The last teleportation could only take 2 people. But Jimin is still here. How can he tell him to leave? Not to mention there are many people around who need help. The more Sung Hoon talked, the more impatient he became. What was the reason for him to stay buried in the same building? He kept asking back and forth. If that were the case, he would not hesitate to let Sung Jae stay here and die with these nameless people. Looking at Sung Hoon's arm growing ice, you know he is not joking. There are many reasons to obey orders, but if Sung Jae has haunted the people here like that, is it okay to kill him to ease the pain? Sung Hoon's cruelty infuriated Sung Jae. He roared and summoned the sacred fire of the plateau to wrap around him, only in return for Sung Hoon's delighted laughter. I'm completely on a different level than you. Think about it carefully. Before he could finish his apostolic advice, Sung Hoon was sucked by something from behind and fell face first to the ground. It was the giant body of a centipede pinning him to the tile floor. Lee Jian's feet wearing Gucci shoes appeared immediately, asking what they were doing while they were still here. The knife he brought from Sung Jae's house must have been a genuine product from a sushi shop. After eating for a while now, it still hasn't been damaged. Now he just wants to get these kids out. Sung Jae told him that the door was blocked, so they hung around here. If you want to go out, you can only use Sung Hoon's teleportation, which is facing the ground. Or think more boldly, kill all the damn animals here and then find another way out that isn't blocked. There are so many injured people here that they can't even walk. So how can we escape together? Time is limited. The Ares apostles are blocking this place to bury everything. Saying it over and over again made me feel so confused that even Jian had to curse a few times. Behind him, Sung Hoon stood up from the rubble, then used his strength to blow away the things that had crushed him to the floor. What's the noise? You want to run away from here regardless of everyone else? Talking for a while without killing anyone, staying bruised. Sung Hoon stared at the phone, gritted his teeth and said he would leave this place himself. The spider must have had special feelings for Sung Hoon. So as soon as he heard that sentence come out of his mouth, it sprayed a web of silk stronger than dog glue, pulling Sung Hoon to stay here with him. He widened his eyes, not expecting that when he wanted to leave the most, he would have to accept the spider's feelings. It sucked Sung Hoon into its mouth, keeping him as its own for sure. To avoid noisy arguments, the phone used for the infusion immediately fell to the ground, seemingly calling everyone back to reality. There was still a spider queen in the supermarket. Jian opened his mouth and said the first kind sentence of the day, asking the 2 young men to take care of the injured people. Let him take care of these hideous things. Probably afraid that his younger brothers wouldn't believe him. Jian's whole body radiated a pale light. Repeat. I'll deal with it quickly. At that time outside, The Ocelot apostles were trying to reconnect the roof of the barrier outside the supermarket. As soon as Yang Wei arrived, he saw that the matter was not finished, and asked why the progress was so slow, making his subordinates sweat. Because I've been working so hard all this time, I haven't dared to rush around, but this strict class seems so weird. Boss. It was clear that something was blocking it. As soon as he finished speaking, a bright blue light shot out from inside the supermarket, causing the white birch apostles to quickly dodge away to avoid being blinded. The image of a giant snake, half blue and half white, curled out of the roof of the supermarket, radiating a terrible energy that threw the people sitting on the ground. Yang Wei did not dare to imagine that in front of his eyes was a snake. Then just a second later, all the people in the supermarket rushed out screaming and rushing to hug the bodyguards outside. They dragged and pulled in panic, telling the situation that someone was killing the spider monster and wanted to be released. But for the time being, no one was able to get out. Yang Wei's face turned gray when he heard those words. There was no way he couldn't kill a spider queen, and there was someone who could. You have to go check it yourself to make sure it's safe. Yang Wei told his subordinates to separate and let him in, but they kept blocking him. Yang Wei was so tired that he threw his body in, coming to an aisle with broken glass. He just landed inside. Li Jian loomed out of nowhere and smiled. Hello, long time no see. Are you not happy or something? So panicked. Yang Wei almost poked his mother's testicles out. Could it be possible to greet each other less abruptly? He's already 40, middle-aged. People often get scared. Thanks to Yang Wei, the emergency sirens rang out in the outside area. The rescue team quickly arrived at the scene to take the injured person for treatment. Among that group were Sung Jae and Jimin, wrapped in blankets, sitting in a corner, silently. Sung Jae was not injured, but he was mainly psychologically traumatized. Just keep thinking about it. Is that guy Li Jian? The appearance is completely different, but the way of moving is extremely similar. Sung Jae suddenly heard a familiar call from his father, Hugo, who quickly ran over and asked, "Why are you here?" Sung Jae saw his father and immediately turned around and pretended to be sulking, just like a rebellious teenager, while Jimin gasped, wanting to rush over and ask for the saint's autograph, going back and forth like a fairy riding a cloud back to Korea. Sung Jae doesn't even know when, but now he's an ignored son who always asks questions and doesn't answer. Hugo was thinking about how to ask his son about it. After a moment, he took a breath and asked about his health first. Then, back to business, asked about the person who destroyed the monsters inside the supermarket. But Sung Jae still didn't answer. How many strange beasts has Hugo punched without punching this guy? Jimin probably knew that the centaur was hotter than ice cream, so he opened his mouth and asked Sung Jae, "Li Jian, are you sure it's okay?" Hearing the sensitive name, Jimin was immediately grabbed. Hugo lost his image and asked harshly if he just said Jian. Where is the photo? Jimin's brain disconnected from the server a few seconds ago. Jian said it was Jian who was on duty, not the saint that Uncle Hugo said. If it was my brother holding the knife, he would be in the supermarket killing the queen. The story was simple, but Jimin suddenly felt confused when he heard it through his mouth. Hugo grabbed the boy's shoulder and asked again to make sure they were one or two. Suddenly, the upper floor of the supermarket exploded violently. The walls flew away. The city cut the dust and brought it with it to the sky. It was smoke. That ruined place echoed with the sound of a man running. Jiang Wei, now regretting the amount of meat he had consumed and not carrying his belly to exercise. No matter how much he ran, Li Jian would still laugh, he, in front of him. It's been 2 years since we last met. But why are you so shocked? Aquarius? At this point, Jiang Wei still hadn't figured out who the hell the guy in front of him was. So he still had to open his mouth to ask who he was. The feeling that the guy in front of him gave Jiang Wei was extremely similar to Li Jian. But that guy's face was covered in scars. His head was still bald. Not to mention his voice was completely different. And most importantly, there's no way Li Jian is this young. Jiang Wei was probably trying to scare the guy in front of him, pretending to be Li Jian. So he opened his mouth to curse first. Li Jian suddenly got scolded without knowing why. He mumbled and asked, "I'm that guy, but why did you curse me for? Cheating?" Jiang Wei kept thinking about some crazy guy pretending to be Jian, so he used his strength to punch him. Unexpectedly, Jian rushed forward and hit him in the stomach, wanting to get rid of all the fat, knocking the birch saint down. And he followed him. From the air, he gave another punch, pushing his overweight body to the ground below, then calmly landed next to him. Jian's lips still kept smiling when he asked his lover that he had been eating too much lately. So he forgot about having to eat. To listen to others, right? That day when you killed me in the Devil's Tower. Did you find your life happier and more blossoming? Every step he took towards Jiang Wei was a reminder that the group of saints had swallowed up all his assets. Even his will was deeply torn. But it's okay, dear. I'm here today to kill you, so money doesn't matter. He clenched his fist and made a loud noise, whispering his plan that after beating Jiang Wei, he would go to the church's family and friends. And then every one of those scum people would have a part. The image of the entire Birch Church collapsing before Jian's threat made Jiang Wei more or less mad. He couldn't let him do those things so easily. Trying to endure the pain, Jiang Wei looked intently at the guy in front of him, temporarily, knowing that he wasn't joking, but was acting too fast and couldn't keep up with the move. So the guy in front of me is really Li Jian, who has come back to life and waded out of that demon tower with a completely different appearance? Suddenly Jiang Wei stood up, his expensive shirt flying away as he lowered his head and repeated, "If you're Li Jian, you have to prove to me that you're telling the truth." Jiang Wei's whole body flew up high with the energy that violently moved the air. He opened up a lot of space behind him, his eyes flashing with fire, wanting to solve all his questions with force. The space surrounding the district swirled and was covered in red light. Below Jiang Wei's feet appeared a formation shaped like Ares' head. Very quickly he summoned the transformation spell. On his head appeared an ancient hat, imitating the divine king of Ares, the first saint of this zodiac, with 7 swords of various types flying around. Mom, I really remember the feeling. But the Mandarin hat on his head shows that this fat guy has only summoned a part of his power. Not all of it. Jiang Wei didn't answer, pointing his index finger forward. A tangle of chains appeared on the ground beneath Jian's feet, tightly wrapping around his body, pinning him to the ground. His fat face showed a superior smile, asking Jian again if he saw your father as weak anymore. From nowhere appeared hundreds of thousands of sharp swords of all kinds, merging together like fish in a school. Ow! Oa attacks to create the secret technique of the absolute god Ares. The bitch emperor takes action to punish opponents. 7 giant sword beams from Jiang Wei roared towards Jian, blowing away all the rocks and air on the way. His eyes were narrowed like those oppas who disdain, criticize, and pretend to ignore expensive effects. Shut your mouth, bitch. Jiang Wei performed the skill but did not forget to curse Jian to relieve his anger. If this sword hits him, it will turn him into a tattered human-shaped teddy bear. With a loud rumble, the sound of rocks being stabbed by hundreds of thousands of swords made a terrifying sound. When the smoke dissipated, and the light from the supermarket's barrel poured down, a pile of bristling piles of growing material appeared. An extremely majestic scene. Jiang Wei doesn't know if Jian is dead or not. First, just open your throat and exhale. Even though he's so fat and fights for a long time, this father is also exhausted. He'll have to go home later and have 2 servings of fried chicken to regain his strength. For a while, without seeing any movement, Jiang Wei landed on the ground, enjoying the feeling of being a winner. In the end, the foolish person died when facing an experienced person. This mountain of swords easily buried Li Jian. 20 years have passed and this guy still thinks he's the 13th saint. Jiang Wei was smiling happily. Suddenly from the bottom of the stack of swords emitted a familiar green light, as if he did not want him to wait too long. No, it can't be. Jiang Wei's eyes seemed completely foolish. He could only stand and wait for the blue and white power inside to knock all the swords he had stuck into the ground. Li Jian's whole body was scratched and he jumped out of the pile of swords. But he still had enough strength to punch Jiang Wei's fat face. No pain, no money. His torn shirt fluttered in the wind, knocking the fat man into the wall behind him, punching his arrogance away. Jiang Wei's lips trembled, covering more than half of his broken teeth, both scared and confused, not understanding how he could survive that attack. Li Jian really wasn't fake. Ah hee hee, I realized it. There are no scars. That don't look familiar to the right eye. They're full of scars now. My friend, take a closer look. Li Jian's eyes flashed blue with excitement when he kicked Jiang Wei's chest. Your father is back and more powerful than ever, son. Suddenly Li Jian stood up straight and covered his nose with his hand, complaining that those damn swords he pulled up from a septic tank smelled so bad. Jiang Wei didn't answer. His eyes and feet looked at his solid body and let his nose bleed. It's not that this fat man is infatuated with men or anything, but his recovery speed is so amazing that even the Aquarius healing master can't do it. But Jiang Wei did not expect that it was not his wounds that recovered, but the system.